Hello and welcome back to the Narrative Wargamer Podcast. I am Tony Rhodes, and tonight is going to be the latest in our classics episodes here on YouTube, where we take some of our favourite episodes from the history of the show before we had it on YouTube, and we present it up here for you guys to watch and listen if you haven't seen or heard it before. So tonight is going to be a return to episode 32 of the podcast. This is actually the second of our 40k Fun Facts lore quizzes, and was taken from the lore found in the Warzone Charadon Book of Fire book, which I can tell you now included some very interesting and particularly hilarious 40k lore. I had the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Dave Barker and Mr. Daniel Foley, both of which had a great time in the quiz, and I hope you guys have a great time listening to it and enjoying it for the first time here on YouTube.
And we are back, guys, for what I think is quickly becoming one of my favourite segments on the show, and that is the 40k Fun Facts quiz.
Yay!
So, yeah, Dave, you've had the fun time of experiencing this before with the Book of Rust.
Yep.
But Dan, this is your first time on the quiz, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm ultra competitive, but I'm ultra competitive and I'm raring to go, and Dave's going down.
Well, can you give me a quick recap at all about the events that went on in Charadon in the Book of Rust, or do you know the sort of general gist?
Nope.
Which one's the Book of Rust? That's the Death Guard, right?
It's a good start.
Well, so to sort of just recap then for anyone listening who didn't catch the previous show, or generally sort of is up to date on the setting with Warzone Charadon, basically the Book of Rust was all about the invasion of Typhus's Death Guard forces and all the other various Chaos factions he rallied to his banner to basically besiege the worlds around Forge World Metallica. And the events of the Book of Rust basically led up to the start of the invasion of Metallica itself. And the Book of Fire, as we're going to sort of go over, is basically about the arrival of the Imperial reinforcements, sort of like the inevitable retribution that the Imperial war machine finally brings to bear, and Typhus's actual assault on Metallica, as well as some shenanigans that Be'lakor is up to. And it's basically sort of about the wrapping up now of this invasion and Typhus achieving his sort of ultimate goal on Metallica before attempting to escape again, before the Imperial forces are basically able to re-secure the sector and force him out. So it's kind of the usual sort of 40k status quo situation where there's been a big conflict and a big fight, and now things are sort of returning to, well, Charadon is, burnt and damaged and broken, but it's still there, it's still standing, just about. I will say there are a few interesting points that will come up in this quiz that actually I think are quite impactful in ways they aren't typically so. But that's sort of where we're at with this. The whole Book of Fire is that Imperial force, relief force arriving, Typhus making his last ditch effort to sort of besiege Metallica. Does that give you a general sort of catch up then?
That does. I feel very caught up, and yeah, that's it. I'm ready to go.
So, the premise of this will be that I think we've got 4 rounds of questions for this quiz, each one based on a sort of section of the lore and the events that go on. We do have the return of the name game round, which was Dave's favourite from last time.
Can Tony find the same random name generator that Games Workshop themselves use?
Not quite. I had to be more inventive for it this time around, and you'll see why when we get to it. But each question, I'm going to obviously give a little rundown of a bit of snippet of the lore and the events that's happened, and then I'm going to give you a multi-choice selection for which of these facts is true and which I've made up. So we will start with round 1, which I've aptly named Bellacor's Side Quest. Because essentially that's what this is. So the main arc of the story is all about Typhus and his Nurgle invasion force. But as an aside to that, he had some Wordbearer and Alpha Legion allies, which were originally intended to keep House Raven occupied, so that the Knights of House Raven didn't leave their homeworld or their home sector too much and basically get in Typhus's way. Of course, Chaos being Chaos, they did basically not that, and instead were more than happy for House Raven to sally forth because they were busy completing their own agendas, which turns out was basically to summon Be'lakor. You know, they were the disciples of Be'lakor as per the Army of Renown that's covered in the book. And Bellacor's whole deal is basically got nothing to do with supporting Typhus at all. He's just following his own agenda and doing his own things. This whole section, this whole first round is going to be about everything that Be'lakor got up to in the Book of Fire.
Okay.
So
I'm guessing it's not going for a pint of milk or anything like that. I'm guessing it's quite...
Dan, how did you know that pint of milk is Bellacor's real demon name?
Only the true disciples get initiated with that knowledge. Anyways, on to Bellacor's side quest. Round 1, question 1. So this will be a good little intro for you, Dan, and we're going to keep score as we go, and let's see how you both do. So, after claiming the Stygian Temple, the Alliance of Wordbearers Alpha Legionnaires, known as the Disciples, sacrificed a Genestealer cult patriarch in order to summon Be'lakor and gain his favour. He then bid the Disciples depart the temple and travel to Ware to further enact his will. Your choices are A, Forge World Metallica, B, Colossi, homeworld of House Raven, or C, the ocean world of Fathom.
I remember Fathom from last time, right?
Fathom is one of the reoccurring narrative key points
locations
in the books, because it is the ocean world.
We reviewed some Warzones based on Fathom, didn't we?
Yeah.
It is indeed, yes, and it's the one where the fancy sculpted board for a lot of the photography for the Charadon and stuff has been based on, where it's the oil rigs above the surface of the water.
Yeah. See, I'm wondering, is this a trick question where the obvious answer would be the Forge World, or is actually I want to go Fathom? I want to go Fathom.
Well, I don't think it's the Forge World, because that's what the Death Guard wants, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what was the other option that's not Fathom?
House Raven.
Homeworld of the Nightly House of House Raven.
Right. Well, if you're going for Fathom, Dan, I'll go for House Raven anyway. Even though I think it's wrong.
So, Dan, would you like to know how your competitive streak is getting off the mark?
Probably not very well.
Not very well, because Dave has got it right. It is Colossi, homeworld of House Raven.
Even though I thought I was going to be wrong. Sorry, Dan.
It's alright, it's a fix.
Well, turns out Be'lakor has beef with House Raven, it would seem. So, as we now know that, question 2. Upon the world of Colossi, the indomitable fortress of House Raven is known as the Keep Inviolate, a fortress so large it is only surpassed in size by the Imperial Palace itself and the Fang on Fenris. As befitting of such a vast fortification, which of the following facts is true? A. Its topmost pennants and banners drift in the void of space itself. B. Everything is built to scale for an Imperial Knight, as if it was a regular man. Or C. There is a complete Imperial hive city built within the walls of the keep.
So I just got this image of a knight going, oh, I'm going to go and get something from the fridge, and there's like a knight scale fridge.
I got a vision of a whole regiment of Skitari settling down in the same bed for the night.
Well, if nothing else, I hope this question sets the tone for the quiz.
What's on the television, my dear? Oh, well, let me sit down. This massive knight sits down on a knight-sized sofa, watching his knight-sized television. That just sounds amazing. I kind of want that to be true. I don't think it is, but I really kind of want that to be
Knight
true.
Rider.
Nightmare. There you go. Oh, I forgot what the other choices were. That tickled me, that one.
I'll go with the flags, the pennants at the very top, drifting in the void.
Yeah, I want to go with that one. Except they wouldn't drift in the void because there's no air in space, or am I reading way too much into that?
You've read too many conspiracy theories, mate.
Yeah. I'm going with the flags.
You both go with the flags.
We're both going with the flags.
You don't think my concept of a Imperial Knight-scaled fortress could possibly be an actual 40k thing?
Yeah, no, I believe it could actually be a possible 40k thing. I just don't think it is this time.
Fair enough. Well, you are both correct. It is that, in fact, it's that tall. Some of its topmost pennants and banners actually drift in space. They are above the atmosphere.
I'm really sad that it's not knight-scaled fortress now.
Well, it can be your next conversion project, then.
Yeah.
It's funny because this is somewhat a little bit of what other Dan's complaints were. He liked too many of my false answers, and he's like, I just want these to be true. So, question 3. Due to Typhus's invasion of the Charadon sector, only roughly 1/5 of House Raven's forces remained stationed on Colossi when Be'lakor began his invasion, and as such, they were woefully unprepared for the insidious means by which Be'lakor began his offensive against the planet. But which of these was Be'lakor's first act against Colossi? Was it A, he had Alpha Legionnaires infiltrate the Keeping Violet? B, he used his sorcery to extend the length of the nights on the planet. Nights as in no K, night and day. Or,
I'm sure these war machines were 3 meters shorter yesterday.
Now they don't fit any of the building because the building's too small. We're going to have to make it bigger, mate. We'll
These are hanging off the end of the bed.
or C, he summoned a permanent eclipse of the sun above the world.
See, that just sounds annoying. That's not very chaotic. It's just sort of, oh, I'm going to make it nighttime forever. Oh, thanks. Mind you, that sounds like a Be'lakor thing to do, isn't it? He's kind of one of those demon princes that turns up and goes, I'm not really going to do anything bad. I'm just going to annoy you.
He is the Lord of Shadows.
Yeah.
The Dark
I'm going to go with
Master.
that one. I'm going to go with the eclipse.
And I'm going to go with Alpha Legion.
I can tell you, it is in fact B. He used his sorcery to extend the length of the nights on the planet.
Okay. Nights with no K, fortunately.
He's such an evil, evil man. Or demon.
Oh, dear.
In fact, after 24 cycles, the daylight barely returned to the planet, and soon after, the planet was cast into perpetual, unending night. The only place not affected by the curse was the Keeping Violet itself. A ploy by Be'lakor deliberately intended to turn the population against a nobility who was seemingly spared the same suffering. So he's literally made it so that only the poor population that aren't the knights themselves have to suffer like this, and hence building that resentment to why do the nobles once again get to live it better than us.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Although I prefer the true scale knights.
Yeah,
That are then distorted to not be true scale and then thus ruin their carefully planned out fortress.
I am actually going to have to make a confession now, because I got so I found that the idea of knights growing 3 extra feet so appealing that I forgot that was the actual meaning of the word. No, I thought it was actually he extended the knights. That's why I didn't pick that one, because I just like the idea of knights growing.
Dan, you're losing your competitive edge.
I know. Oh.
I find it hilarious. I think it's funny that you can't like concentrate because you're just finding it that absurd. Good. That's what I want from this. And that's how absurd the 40k universe is. So, question 4. As the perpetual night took hold, how did the imperial authorities respond to the new sinister curse? Did they A. begin burning heretics and drowning caged witches to lift the curse? Did they B. enforce mandatory lumen globes to be worn by all citizens at all times? Or C. Did they take the opportunity to extend citizen curfews to match the greatly reduced daylight hours?
I mean, citizen curfews would be... They'd stop the world being productive.
I'm going to go with looming globes because that sounds very sort of you must wear lights all the time.
Yeah, and burn the witch is very 40k, so I think I'll go with the killing heretics and burning witches or whatever that option was.
Burning witches and burning heretics and drowning witches.
Yep.
And you're going for looming globes, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going for looming globes just because I like the idea that all their citizens have to wear some sort of light bulb jewellery.
Yeah, I really liked this idea as well. The concept of sort of like a really depressing, like government enforced rave where all the citizens are having to wear like glow sticks.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, Bellicor is not evil. He's just really inconsiderate. He's just really annoying. He just goes and goes, I'm just going to make it perpetually dark. Oh, great, thanks.
He's not a demon. He's just a very naughty boy.
He is.
Well, you see, I liked it that much, I made it up.
Oh, no.
It is in fact A. They started burning heretics and drowning caged witches in chemical sump fats in order to try and appease the Omnissiah to lift the curse that had befallen their world.
I'm not doing very well, Dave.
I mean, it's like, you know, there's a crisis in the international scene. What's the first thing the British do? Send an aircraft carrier to the coast of France just in case. It's that kind of response in the 40k universe, isn't it?
It really is. It's kind of like this highly advanced technological world that's home of an entire like knight household, all the rest of it, and their first response to it getting dark at night too much is quick, drown the witches. That'll raise.
You described it as they started drowning the caged witches. Does that mean they had witches ready ready for drowning?
It's just waiting to be pickled.
It's a bit like, I suppose it's like pre-dried fruit, isn't it? You've got like, does that mean they're vacuum sealed? They just open the seal and here's your witch burner. There you go.
Quick hydrating case of heresy.
yeah, hydrate it, dunk her in the water. That's what it is.
But in fact, in addition to this, several House Raven nobles declared quests to go discover the source of the disturbance and bring an end to it, and thus they departed the world, taking many of their household retainers with them. So they were so glory-bound that they were basically abandoning their posts in order to go look for this, evil source of the disturbance so they could destroy it and return mighty heroes, which of course was in fact just weakening their defense because more of their garrison was leaving. Question 5. Before long, reports of nightmare creatures stalking the darkness and preying on victims in the night became rampant. The nobles began evacuating the cities of Colossae and offering sanctuary to the refugees within the walls of the keep in Violet itself. Hidden amongst these refugees, however, were many of Bellicor's agents and corrupted machine priests. Once inside the keep, how did these agents disrupt the forces of House Raven? Was it A, They assassinated any nobles and knight pilots that they could. B. They began rituals to invite demonic possession of the refugees within the keep. Or C. They infected several knights with dormant scrap code and flesh metal demon parasites.
Well, that's a tricky one. See, these are very good questions.
Thank you.
Because all of those could be. I mean, I think the scrap code one sounds. That either the assassinating the pilots or the scrap code sounds right. Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna go with the scrap code. I'm gonna go with the scrap code. I think, Dave.
The scrap code is the most appealing and the most logical after smuggling in, corrupted tech base, which is why I'm going to go for demon summoning. Because it's 40k,
logic.
And it's not entirely logical.
Well, I can tell you on this occasion, Dan got it right. They did in fact infect several knights with dormant scrap code.
Going down, Dave. The fight back.
You're catching up, Dan.
Yeah, the fight back happens today.
Well, speaking of the fight back, question 6. Once Be'lakor's demonic legions emerged from the darkness and the siege began in full, the knights rallied behind their commanding noble Sir Havlorn. However, disaster struck during his address to his warriors. What was it? Was it A. Corrupted machine priests overloaded the reactor of Sir Havlorn's knight, causing it to explode and killing Sir Havlorn instantly? B. The scrap code corrupted knights opened fire on their fellows, killing Sir Havlorn instantly, and half the remaining loyalist knights? Or C. Be'lakor himself emerged from the darkness to descend upon the gathered knights, killing Sir Havlorn instantly?
So he's definitely dead, right?
He is definitely dead. It did not go well for Sir Havlorn.
Dave, he's dead. He's dead, Dave.
What about Sir Havlorn?
He's dead, Dave. He's dead.
What, all of them?
He's dead, Dave. I'm going to go with the scrap code because I feel like Be'lakor jumping out of the shadows, because considering he's the master of deceit and sort of which is a proper chaos title, I reckon the scrap code is the reason, because that makes sense. So what do you think, Dave?
No, you see, given that he's a master of deceit and he's already done the scrap code thing once, I think he jumped out of a giant birthday cake and killed them all, in Under Siege. Yeah.
Was that a birthday cake to scale for knights, and that's why Be'lakor could
Exactly.
Massive candles. Stop
That's
it!
not a candle. That's a plasma candle.
Do you think they got one of those sparklers on top as well? It's just like
They just had some of those comedy candles eaten.
Yeah, the night keeps blowing out, just keeps relighting.
Yeah.
Oh, for goodness sake, who ordered these? I'll cut the cake. Chainsaw through the middle of it.
I don't think there was actually a cake in your answers, was there, Tony?
No. So what we're going for then? So is Dave going for Be'lakor surprises him? And Dad, you're going for the scrap code knights and fire on their fellows.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that, Dan, you are right. And that means you draw even with Dave again in the scoreboard. So yes,
come on!
It was the case that the scrap code infected knights opened fire upon the gathered knights, including a point blank melter cannon shot, just eradicating Sir Havlorn's knight and melting him instantly. So yeah, it did not go well for any of them. So the world's wrapped in darkness, half the knights are turning upon each other, all the population is turning to refugees inside the keep, and demons are praying at the door. It's not going well on Colossae, is it?
No. But they have cake, so it's all good.
And Lumen globes.
And a massive TV.
So, as a vanguard force of Adeptus Sororitas arrived in the system to aid the besieged House Raven, Be'lakor enacts his final master plan to seal their fate. As the all-consuming darkness completely shrouded the surface of Colossae, which of the following happened? Was it A, that the suffocating shadows extinguished all sentient life, leaving the world a deserted husk? B, the keep in Violet itself is consumed by immense warp rifts and cast into the warp, leaving a continent-sized crater scarring the face of Colossae? Or is it C, the entire planet vanishes from the void, the traitors stealing away the world and all those fighting upon its surface?
Oh, that's pretty big. All of those are pretty, like...
Mm-hmm.
All of those are pretty, like, haha, no more Metallica. Oh, Dave, I'll let you go first, because I've been first load.
I like the continent-sized crater. I think they stole the, what was it, Deep Purple Fortress?
The keep in Violet.
That's the one.
Is that the Warp Storm one?
Yeah, so the keep in Violet is consumed by immense warp rifts and cast into the warp, leaving a continent-sized crater scarring the surface of Colossae.
So I'm going to go one up, Dave, and I'm going to go planet disappears.
That's fair enough.
So when Dan goes vanished planet, Dave is going vanished keep, effectively.
Yeah, because vanishing the whole planet's ridiculous.
Well, I can tell you, Dave, that the concept of vanishing an entire planet is indeed completely and utterly ridiculous. And that is why that is exactly what happens in the fire.
Yeah.
Because that's 40k. Go big or go home. That's what it is.
I know it's
Right?
canon with things like Titan. Yeah.
Yeah, like Be'lakor literally vanishes the entire planet. It just like pops out of the void, pops out of space, and the this like Imperial relief force just is left like dumbfounded. They just don't know what's happened, and and like that's big. Like in terms of 40k lore and events, right? This isn't even just some random world. This is like the home world of one of the mainline like chapters of Imperial Knight households. House Raven were the ones who got an entire supplement in the previous book, and their home world has just disappeared.
That is quite big. That's
like, can you imagine if that happened to McCrag? Like how much community like talk and chat there'd be about that.
You mean like when the Tyranids destroyed Baal?
Yeah, kind of. Except that was in fact the usual sort of 40k status quo maintained conflict, whereas this actually isn't. Be'lakor effectively wins. He sweeps Colossae away and just takes it.
again though. It's not very chaotic. It's just like, aha, your planet's gone. He's not destroyed it. He's just moved it somewhere.
Depends what he's doing.
Got your nose.
yeah. It's like, where's it gone? Ah.
Yeah, well, you tell that to High Princeps Lord Graven that his entire homeworld has just disappeared. Because, of course, he's busy out crusading to try and beat Typhus and relieve Metallica. So, funnily, it's quite clever how they've done it, because obviously they said that only a very small portion of House Raven was actually left stationed on the world. So it's not like House Raven is suddenly a non-playable faction, because the majority of its forces are still at large in the galaxy, fighting their, crusades and stuff.
Do you think he has the same reaction as when you lose your keys? Oh, where did I put it? Where? Oh, I know I put the planet around here somewhere.
It's always in the last sector you look. So yeah, that is the majority of Belcor's side quest. Although, funnily enough, there is one bonus question here, because all that is relating previously to his sort of like devious plans with Colossi. But interesting tidbit of information relating to Belcor and his machinations at large in the universe was in this book, and I thought it would make a great question. So, amongst Belcor's many schemes and devious plans, he recently aided the warsmith Shon II of the Iron Warriors in boarding the Imperial Fist's fortress battleship, the Phalanx, in an attempt to use it to bombard the Imperial Palace on Terra. Ultimately, the attack was unsuccessful, but what happened during the aftermath that may have been Belcor's true goal all along? A. Shon II escaped with rare samples of genetic material from the Primarch Roldorn himself. B. The Adeptus Custodes secretly infiltrated hidden operatives on board the Phalanx. Or C. Cypher appeared on board the Phalanx before escaping with a mysterious artifact taken from the chapter vaults.
I mean, it's got to be losing parts of Dawn. Dawn's losing parts of himself all over the place.
Yeah, I kind of feel like my instant thought before you read out the statement was his hand's gone miss. He's nicked his hand or something.
I think we're agreed on that one.
Yeah, I think they've lost relics.
Well, they've lost relics of Dawn himself.
Yeah, there's a fingernail there, eyelash over there.
Well, I can tell you, you're both wrong.
Oh.
It is, in fact, go on, I'll give you a second chance. There will be a point up for grabs here, but let's see, which do you think it is? Do you think it's the Custodes secretly infiltrating hidden operatives on board the Phalanx, or was it Cypher appearing and escaping with a mysterious artifact?
Oh, that's the one I meant, actually. I thought the mysterious Sorry, I'll go with Cypher, because that was the one I thought you were on about. I thought you were talking about... I thought the mysterious artifact was a bit of Dawn.
No. Option A was some genetic material.
Well, I'm going with Cypher, because he's a dodgy bloke, isn't he? He's like, oof.
I can't see how the Custodes fit in anyway, but I'll go with that one just to be different.
Well, Dan, that just means you're wrong on 2 counts. Because it was not Cypher either. It was, in fact, the Adeptus Custodes secretly infiltrated hidden operatives on board the Phalanx.
So how was that Belcor's plan?
Because the whole purpose of this was that the operatives have been planted there on the Phalanx so the Custodes can keep a closer eye on the chapter commanders of the Imperial Fists, in a further escalation of the growing mistrust between the Adeptus Astartes and the Adeptus Custodes.
So,
aren't the Custodes like half as big again as the space?
Yeah, I was going to say, how do they fit in the yellow armour?
Sergeant, why is that crewman half as big again as a spaceman? You recruit, sir, pay no mind.
I mean, I believe it's implied that they are like human operatives, in the same way that like the Alpha Legion make use of human operatives. So they're reporting back to their custody overlords. But I also like the idea there's a custode literally like with a mop and bucket just doing some janitorial work, listening in. But yeah, like it's funny, they've been building up this idea that since the Custodes have gone back out into the galaxy now with Gulliman's like new edict, that they themselves as like a faction are becoming ever more active in their mistrust of the Astartes, because they still remember the events of the original heresy.
Can you blame them?
Yeah, they don't trust the Astartes, and they still think that they have too much freedom and agency in the Imperium when they've, proven themselves to not be trustworthy. So yeah, it's just this interesting little subtone narrative that Games Workshop's been weaving into a few things now, and and the implications in the Book of Fire are that Be'lakor himself has attempted to stoke this mistrust between the two factions.
Well, it happens in the War of the Spider as well.
Yeah,
I believe
it is starting to creep in there as something that Games Workshop keeps revisiting. But as for Be'lakor, that's all his involvement in the Book of Fire. He just basically steals away Colossi. I mean, I say just, it's pretty significant actually, but he's not involved in the larger conflict with Metallica. However, a certain personality who is a one Morven Val, our new High Abbotess of the Adeptus Sororitas. And that's because she turns up in a Imperial Retribution fleet. So she actually comes from the Indomitus Crusade, and basically he is to not so much free Charadon, but more purge it. So, moving on to round 2, Imperial Retribution. How did Morven Val take precautions to ensure the use of punishingly swift short-range warp jumps did not befall the innumerable risks involved in such manoeuvres? So this is because when she showed up in the sector, they're basically like, oh no, the whole place is on fire. Where are the heretics? Take me to the heretics now. Over there? Good. Warp jump. Warp jump again and again and again. Just get me there as quick as possible. I don't care about the risks. So, did she safeguard against all the hazards involved in doing so by A, trusting in massed prayer to ensure the Emperor's protection, B, expend the lives of several navigators per jump, or C, did she enforce cryostasis on all non-essential crew in order to limit the risks of demonic possession while in translation?
See, cryostasis doesn't sound very 40k. That's too nice. It's too. Oh, we don't want anyone to die. That'd be terrible. What will happen? So I'm counting that one out. It's too nice.
Doesn't involve needless waste of human life.
Can't
be 40k.
Yeah, it can't be 40k. There's no complete utter disregard for human life. What were the other two again? The
Trust into prayer.
See, that sounds very sisters.
Or she knowingly expended the lives of several navigators in order to make those jumps.
And see, that also is very sisters.
Yeah, she wouldn't have valued the lives of the navigators being mutants, would she?
No, I'm going to go with expended the lives of the navigators because navigators.
And I'll go with relies on prayer alone.
I can tell you, she did indeed trust the massed prayer to ensure the Emperor's protection.
I should have gone with that one.
Yes, obviously being Abbotess of the Adeptus Sororitas, she didn't believe there would be any repercussions in simply trusting in the Emperor's protection, despite basically throwing the fleet repeatedly in and out of the warp with little more protection than baseline Geller fields.
It's what the Tau do.
Yeah, skipping the warp more than diving.
How did that Fourth Crusade go for them?
What Fourth Crusade?
Expansion, sorry.
We don't talk about the fourth expansion. There was no fourth expansion. Everyone knows the Tau numeric system is 1, 2, 3, 5.
It's a private matter.
Next question. How did Morven Val's battle fleet respond to any fleeing Imperial voidcraft that crossed their path, including refugee ships and messengers seeking reinforcements for faltering war zones? Did they A, offer sanctuary, resupply them and induct them into the fleet's growing militia forces? Or B, they were interrogated and then conscripted into the fleet's malicious forces. Or C, they were destroyed on sight by the fleet for the crime of abandoning the Emperor's cause.
See.
Well, given that she's already trusting the Emperor with massive amounts of prayers, I'm actually going to go with B. She interrogated and then conscripted them.
I can tell you, she offered them the Emperor's mercy in that they were destroyed on sight for the crime of abandoning the Emperor's cause.
See, Dave, there was so much conviction in my answer of C because 40k.
So much conviction, more than Val herself would have been proud.
Yep. Kill them all. That's basically the answer.
Well, I think you'll find this next question interesting then. So, basically, across the sector, whenever Morven Val would arrive at besieged Imperial worlds seeking Imperial relief, she would often enforce a policy of purgation, where just because the defenders have survived their conflicts of chaos doesn't mean they aren't necessarily tainted because they've been busy fighting chaos. So a lot of the time she would instigate the execution of surviving Imperial forces along with the purging of the heretic forces to ensure the purity of the Imperial worlds.
She sounds like my kind of girl.
So, as part of Morven Val's campaign of purgation across besieged worlds, her forces would cleanse both the heretic invaders and any surviving Imperial defenders to ensure the purging of possible demonic taint. On the industrial world of Labyrinthum, sisters from the Order of the Bloody Rose were initially opposed in their attempt to carry out this sanction by an Ultramarines task force. How was this disagreement resolved? Was it A, the Ultramarines were convinced to aid the sisters in their purge once the sanction was presented to them bearing the seal of Abbess Morven Val herself? Was it B, the Ultramarines refused to carry out the sanction and departed the world, leaving the sisters to do their bloody work? Or C, the sisters opened fire upon the Ultramarines when they attempted to shield the survivors, before ultimately martyring themselves on the blades of the Astartes in their fanaticism to carry out Val's orders?
I think it was C, because, I mean, A amounts to, I've got a note from my mum.
See, I think the note from the mum is very, very Ultramarines. No, we're not doing it. No, what we're doing. Oh, it's a piece of paper. Oh, all right, then we'll do it. That's how I see that. I could be wrong. I'm going with the note from mum. I can't remember what the actual answer is, but I like the idea it's a note from mum.
And Dave, are you going with the which option?
Martyred on the blades of the Ultramarines.
Martyred. Well, I can tell you that yes, the Ultramarines are in fact that much sticklers for the rules that when presented with the note from Mum, they aided in the sanction.
It just sounded like an Ultramarine thing to do. No, we're not doing it. No, we're not doing it. Oh, a note.
Yeah, it's true. Again, I read this and I thought, oh wow, like this is one of those moments where the Ultramarines are kind of like shown to be the, the enforcers of the Imperial law that they are.
I forgot that they did level the cities of the Wordbearers' homeworld.
Yep.
I can't remember what it's called now. It's going to bug me. Montiarch or something like that. Monarchia. Was that it? Yeah. I think it was Monarchia.
Something like that.
But so you're right. During the Heresy, the Ultramarines conducted the Emperor's sanction against the Wordbearers, didn't they? So. Yeah, it was in fact the case that the Ultramarines did initially oppose aiding in this sanction. They didn't like the idea of slaughtering the Imperial survivors, but when presented with a piece of paper signed by a High Lord of Terror, they not only didn't stand in the way, they followed the order. And they aided the sisters in their purge of the
such an Ultramarine thing to do.
It is, isn't it? So, oh, okay, yeah, sure, if a High Lord says it, then I guess Gulliman isn't here to argue the point on our behalf, so sure. Next question. facing inevitable destruction at the hands of the traitor titans of Legio Morbidus, how did the astropaths of Ferro Vigilum give their lives in the aid of the Emperor's cause? A. They launched a psychic assault against the Titans, hoping to cripple them by destroying the minds of the crew inside their command thrones. B. They projected a devastating etheric disharmony into the heart of the Saw in an attempt to destabilize the growing warbrift. Or C. They projected a psychic beacon into the void with the hope of alerting Mars to the fate of Metallica and the Charadon sector.
I'm gonna go C, because astropaths are communicators, not fighters. They're lovers, not fighters.
Yeah, they are. And the other options were they assaulted the crews psychically, or they disrupted the warp storm, right?
Yes, the Saw being the great warbrift manifestation that Typhus had enacted elsewhere in the Charadon sector.
Yeah, the warp. I mean, that seems even bigger than sending out a psychic beacon. Let's go for the smaller one because they're not warriors. Let's do the psychic assault on the Titans.
So we're going psychic assault on the Titans and the beacon to Mars.
Yep.
Unfortunately, on this occasion, you're both wrong. They projected a devastating etheric disharmony. I'm surprised you didn't guess that I didn't come up with those words myself. Into the heart of the Saw in an attempt to destabilize it, and for all they could tell, it appeared to work. And in the coming days, the Saw began to wane and lost its potency. Yeah, so in fact, it was kind of a little bit of both, because their last act of blasting out this psychic energy into the void of space did actually cause the astropathic sanctum to detonate in a searing blast of psychic energy, burning away into the void and toppling the traitor titans. So they knocked them over with a shockwave as a side effect of what they were actually attempting to do.
Ah, that's why it didn't seem... I don't know what the word is. It kind of sounds very Marvel Big Blue Light in the Sky, doesn't it?
It is. It kind of is, yeah. Speaking of big blue light in the sky, on the ocean world of Fathom, Abbess Morven Val corners Akraf Seed, who, although we didn't mention him directly in the previous Fun Facts episode, he's basically Abaddon's emissary. So he's the representative from Abaddon who is enacting Abaddon's will on his behalf when working with Typhus. So he's been basically running around being all mustache-twirling villain throughout all of this, but not really doing a great deal other than just harassing Imperial worlds. But yeah, so on the ocean world of Faven, Abbess Morven Val corners Akraf Seed, this time hidden in the depths of the vast undersea habitat sprawl known as Omnis. Unwilling to engage with the Imperial forces, how did Val force the megastructure to surface? Did she A. bombard it from orbit, forcing it to engage its preservation protocols? Or B. Space Marine Terminators teleported on board and battled to reach the override controls? Or C. Val broadcast a message to Omnis challenging Akraf Seed to single combat and to face the Emperor's justice?
I mean, bombarding the sub-ocean habitat from orbit.
To make
the way to defend a bait at that is to remove the ocean that's protecting you from orbit between you and that doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. I'm going to shoot the water to make you come out of the water, which is protecting you from me shooting you.
I mean, that's not even 40k silly.
It's a little absurd, isn't it?
Which makes me think it's the right answer.
The Dave approach.
I'm drawn to the single combat thing, but I'm going to go with the Terminators.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to go Terminators.
Well, I'll go with the single combat thing then.
Well, I can tell you, It is, in fact, that absurd, it's true.
No!
She bombarded the ocean from orbit because she was attempting to force it to be damaged enough that it had to surface.
But why? It makes no sense.
I think the idea is that obviously she knew roughly its location, not enough to be able to just target it and destroy it, but if she just saturated the area, it would be damaged enough that it would have to reveal itself.
Right, so she was playing a massive game of battleships.
Or Minesweeper.
Or Minesweeper. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Or that episode of Star Trek when they fire 4-ton torpedoes at a cloaked Romulan ship.
Wow.
Once forced to surface and facing direct Imperial assault by overwhelming numbers, Akraf Zed attempts another daring escape and once again calls his vast orbital lander to perform a dangerous low-altitude extraction. But what happened next? Was it A? The lander crushes several House Raven Knights on landing, and after extracting Zed, partially collapses the remains of Omnis before leaving, thus crippling the Imperial assault. Or B? Morven Val and Lord Princeps Gravan lead an assault on board the lander as it makes for orbit with Zed, where they confront him before he later escapes through a warp portal. Or C? Lord Princeps Graven is prepared for this old trick of Zed's and has his House Raven Knights concentrate fire on the lander's engines on its approach, crippling it and sending it crashing into Omnis.
Just a minute, wasn't this Lord Princeps the one that was killed by Be'lakor's birthday cake?
No, he is the Lord of House Raven and was out crusading when...
He's the one who's lost his car keys. I mean, the planet.
Right.
Yeah, he's the one who's lost his planet, yeah. It was Lord Havlorn who was his, Duke or whatever.
So I'm going to go with C, which is he knew what was going to happen and blew the ship away into a million pieces.
I was tempted by that one, but I'm going to go with... Well, this is a bad guy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who's low orbital lander. So he's not going to successfully defeat the Imperial forces. What was the third option?
That one.
Yes, it's either his lander is shot down and crashes, or he escapes on the lander but is pursued by a boarding action, and then he later escapes via a warp portal. Or, in his escape, he basically cuts off the Imperials and trying to pursue him.
B. He escapes from a warp portal, eventually.
Well, Dan is starting to pull ahead, because it is indeed the fact that the Knights of House Raven shot it down on its approach.
So I'm going to tell you why I went for that one, because I've never heard of Abaddon's second in command called that one, and I feel like his name didn't require plot armor, so that's why I chose it, because it just sounded like, random villain B needs killing. Okay, we'll kill him off. He's not in our fluff.
Yeah, he does very much have a non-plot armor-based death, because, as it's described, the plummeting orbital lander crashes into the superstructure of Omnis and sinks 2 square miles of the habitat sprawl, sending the Chaos Forces and Akraf Zed himself into the bottomless depths of Fathom, amidst tons of burning wreckage and debris. And in fact, in the Book of Fire, there's a relic which is actually playable on tabletop as being his bionic eyes that have been recovered from his corpse.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it's like that. What is it, like that leech from D&D? Vecna.
However, now we get to my favourite part of the quiz. We get to the very aptly named Round 3. Subroutine Mechanicus Designation Directive Paradigm, aka the Mechanicus Name Game.
Does it have its own theme tune this round? I feel like this should have its own theme tune.
It does, but it's all in binary.
Does it sound like a 56k dial-up tune? That would be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds exactly like loading Manic Miner on a Spectrum.
So, yes, now that we've sort of covered Bellacor's side quest and what he's been up to, and we've talked about Orvan Val's basically retribution fleet that comes in system and starts clearing up all the heretics elsewhere around Charadon. The actual battle for Metallica in the book is covered in quite a bit of detail, and to be honest, it's a couple of pages spread of basically large-scale bolter porn. It's just lots of cool combat stuff, but there isn't really a lot of bits of fun or cool information for you to pull out for the purposes of this, quiz. But it's a really big, in-depth sort of conflict about how Typhus, begins his assault on the planet and sets up his perimeter for his objectives, and then tries to force through these, lines of defences that Heptus Clang has set up, and it's really in depth, and there's titans and all sorts, and it's pretty cool like that. I'd advise going and reading it, but the sort of standout thing for me was that there's a gorgeous map, basically the main site on Metallica where this conflict occurs, and all the areas dotted around have all got place names as to those regions of that continent on Metallica. And as you can imagine, for a Forge world of some prestige such as this, they have very Mechanicus-sounding names for a lot of these locations. So I felt it was the perfect candidate for a name game round. So it's just one category, and these are all locations on the surface of Metallica, and I want you to tell me whether you think each one of them is either true or false.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So the first one, for example, is simply called the Corona Militarum.
Military crown.
You go first, Dave.
Yeah, true.
I'm going to go false.
It is true. It is actually the sort of the artificial orbital ring around the planet, where basically all the military, basically the space lasers and orbital planetary defenses are based. It's quite funny because as part of the invasion, Typhus looks for an opportunity to board it, the orbital ring itself, and he implants a virus that basically is like a scrap code thing that starts taking over, and he eventually corrupts the whole thing and then turns all those orbital guns downwards onto the planet.
That's cool.
But next on our name game list is Videus Terminus Cordon.
Videus Terminus. It does sound like a knight or titan-like name.
I'm going to go with false.
Oh, it could be, though. I'll go with true.
That one is false. I made it up.
I just have this image of James Corden. That's why I didn't think it was. It was just like the Deus Terminus James Corden is what I thought.
Well, funnily enough, in the upcoming Octarius book, there is something called the Cordon Impenetra.
That sounds.
So
that makes sense for that.
Yeah, Cordon is used in a 40k sense as well as a 21st century TV show host sense. But yeah, next up we have the Enlightenment through Artifice Spaceport. Trust me, these are just going to get more and more ridiculous as we go along.
True.
False.
It is in fact true.
Oh, is that true?
It's a real place on Metallica, Enlightenment through Artifice Spaceport.
I love your creative use of the word real place.
I can hear the frustration now coming through. I can hear it's subtly there, but it's seeping through, isn't it?
A bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If enlightenment through artifice spaceport is true, then so is enragement through 40k quiz.
Yeah. The thing is, I responded like that when I got it right, Dan.
Well, next we've got Clang's Ascension spaceport.
Isn't Clang a comedy character on BBC Three?
He is also a Fabricator General of Fortress Metallica.
Is that true? Is that true?
That is true. We know that from the last quiz. Yeah, it is Fabricator General Heptus Clang. He is the Fabricator General.
Heptus Clang. That's a name.
Is that the one that's the size of an Astraeus battle tank?
Yes, he is.
What's the name of the place again? Say the name of the place again.
Clang's Ascension spaceport.
Oh, it's so out there. It's got to be true. I'm going with true.
I'm going to agree with Dan on this one. I also think it's true.
It is, in fact, false. I made it up. Next, we have the Ironclad Expanse.
By Sir Mix-a-Lot. False.
I think it's true.
It is true. It is essentially the sort of like landfill of Metallica, where they just dump all the expended servitors.
The Ironclad Expanse.
And it's a mountain of dead servitors.
The landfill of, yes, pretty much.
This one being broken. Go and put him on a heap.
Are we talking about Dan or the servitors?
Both.
I just like the idea that there's just a big pit with servitors just walking around in circles saying random stuff. Just sort of going beep, boop, fax machine. Well, would you like a water, sir? Ooh, turmeric.
I guess it's a little bit like that scene in iRobot with all the defunct robots in the shipping containers.
Oh yeah. The Ironclad Expanse. How can an expanse be ironclad? I don't understand.
All covered in iron.
But
it's expansive, and there's a lot of iron. Well, let's see what you make of this next one, then. Is this one true or false? The Data Cathedrum of the Omnisire Risen.
Oh, that sounds
40k. I mean, I do think that sounds very 40k. I think I'm going to have to go true.
I was going to go true. Yeah, I was going to go true.
You are correct. It is true. Does that sound a little more justified than the Ironclad Expanse? Even though
I mean, the Ironclad Expanse sounds just knock off 40k. That just, it's just.
Well, I can tell you getting into some of the really fun names now. So next we've got the Sanctified Data Reliquary of Arkan Land.
Oh,
well, why would that be out? Why would that be away from Mars?
I'm going with true on that one.
Didn't land? Let's generously use the word live on Mars.
No, I'm going with true.
False.
It is false. I can tell you that yes, Arkan Land is an actual, obviously, historical character from 40k.
Land Raider, Land Speeder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read, just as a quick aside, if you read the great works of Belisarius Cawl, there are some fantastic callbacks to him. I think it's that one
some
where he gets
callbacks.
Well, yeah, he gets annoyed about the fact that people can't understand that it's named after him and not It's really, really funny. It's a nice little. It's almost as good as the callback to Goldilocks and the Three Bears, which is also in that book. I'm not kidding. It talks about where planets live and where planets should be, and it talks about an Ursus Major, an Ursus Minor, and an Ursus, and they had this breakfast, and the planets. I'm not joking. It's in the book. It's fantastic, and it talks about how planets have got to be in the right space, otherwise they're too hot or too cold. They've just got to be just right.
That's a real physics thing.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's called the.
It is called the Goldilocks.
The Goldilocks belt, isn't it?
But with it being 40k'd up, it just sounds amazing.
Yeah, I know. I once listened to an audio drama where it's like during the events of the heresy, and Malkador's got a special task force that are basically going and recovering lots of significant cultural relics, to preserve them, to make sure it doesn't get destroyed. And there's one point where he's leading this like military guy who's got the stuff for him through this vault of ancient Terran relics. And it doesn't say it, but it's heavily implied that the guy inquires about a book on a plinth, and he's like, "Oh, what's that? What could possibly be so significant about that book?" And Malcolm says, "That little thing, that has been responsible for more death and bloodshed and conflict than you could possibly imagine, possibly anything else ever created by humanity."
9th edition.
5th edition.
5th edition.
Yeah, like it's heavily implied that it's a copy of the Bible.
That's cool.
Like one of the few remaining ones. But yes, speaking of biblical stuff and saints, our next name game option is Saint Facsimilus's The Replicator's Data Canyon.
Only in Ultra Rain's Blue movie.
Would you like me to read that one again, Dan?
Because it'll break me. The Data Canyon.
I bet the listeners are glad that I put an audio limiter on these filters.
Would you like to see my Data Canyon? Yes, of course. That's got to be true. I just want it to be true. I want it to be
false. False. It's ridiculous, but that probably means it's true.
What are you going for, then, Dave?
False.
And Daniel going true?
I'm going true because I really hope it is.
I can tell you that the Data Canyon is indeed true.
Yes!
Saint Facsimilus the Replicator's Data Canyon, as penned upon the map of Forgeworld Metallica.
Wow. Where do you want? Where are we going tonight, dear? Oh, we're going to the Data Canyon. I'm actually crying.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. I am too. I loved coming up with this name game round.
This is fantastic.
Well, next up we've got a little bit of a simpler one. We have the Binaric Sanctum.
Yeah, that's just simple 40k, non-inventive stuff. Yes, why not?
I'm going to go false.
It is false. That is one that I made up.
It's too simple. Yeah. Oh, Dave, Data Canyon. Come on. Just.
I'll do some scenery conversion.
Data Canyon.
I'll get some expanding foam and carve it to the right shape.
No, it's got to be made out of microchips.
We're loving chips too.
Or is it some sort of like Excel spreadsheet in the form of a canyon? I don't.
I think the implication is meant to be like a server farm, that sort of idea.
Right. Oh, okay.
And obviously there's the two significant large walls of all the server banks.
The Priesthood of Mars doesn't do spreadsheets, but when they do, they're the size of a canyon.
I'm trying to paint. I can't paint with this. It's too funny.
I'm painting a power sword, trying to get it watered.
Can you imagine if some of the listeners are currently trying to do some painting and this just keeps setting them off as well?
Right, I'm ready. I'm good.
Right.
Oh dear.
Next up, we've got the Prime Motive Force Genitorum.
I'm going to go with true for that one because that's been referenced a lot lately in the later fiction, the Prime Motive Force stuff. They seem to be using that phrase a lot. So I'm going to go with true.
Go with false, just to be contrary.
It's a good plan, Dave, because it is indeed false. And yes, it is a true. It is a true and commonly used term. Is the motive force? It's part of the Holy Trinity of the Omnissiah.
Yeah.
But that does not mean there is a Prime Motive Force Genitorum on Metallica in this instance.
Or as we call it in 21st century, Van de Graaff generator.
Or a
right then, let's see how you handle this next one. This is our penultimate.
I'm actually putting stuff down. Right, okay.
This is the Agraptus Vung Memorial Munitionary Manufactorum.
Agraptus Vung. I'm sure he was in Star Wars Clone Wars, wasn't he?
Can you say it again faster 3 times?
Agraptus Vung Memorial Munitionary Manufactorum. Agraptus Vung Memorial Munitionary Manufactorum. Agraptus Vung Memorial Munitionary Manufactorum.
It's got to be true. It's got to be true. I'm going with true.
False.
It is true, yes. The Agraptus Vung Memorial Munitionary Manufactorum is basically a bullet factory.
Oh, for crying out loud. Do you know what that sounds like? You ever seen is it Bed Knobs and Broomsticks?
I have seen
something tremendous D. That's what it is. It's a spell from Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
And then finally, to round out the subroutine Mechanicus designation directive paradigm round, we have Saint Boulin's Precogitator Augury.
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 A-U-G. Augury.
Say that one again.
Saint Boulin's Precogitator Augury.
I mean, it's pretty close to Boolean.
Precogitator, so before computers.
It sounds like you've made that up as an alternative.
Yeah, I'm going to go with made up.
Difference engine.
Yeah, I'm saying made up.
It might not be Tony that's made it up.
You don't believe it might be a pre-Terran artifact?
I think it's false.
True.
It is false. Yes, I made that one up. And that is the last of the name game round questions. And yes, I did make up about half of them in the end, Han, but the ones that are true are somewhat ridiculously true, aren't they?
The takeaway from the evening is the data canyon. I just that tickled me more than it should have done. I don't know what to say. My God, just goodness me. Wow.
I think with that, it's about right time to move on to our fourth and final round, simply known as the Aftermath. So this now is effectively the last bits of the book, sort of tying up the outcome of the Siege of Metallica and the Imperial reclamation of the sector. So, question 15. At the climax of the invasion of Forge World Metallica, Typhus is forced to commit to an all-or-nothing assault to succeed in his Plaguebringer offensive. While risking death and further grievous injury to himself, Typhus is ultimately able to penetrate the Sanctorum Primaris and deliver the Nemesis worm. But where precisely does Typhus implant the plague? Is it A?
The Data Canyon.
The Data Canyon.
Dave.
No, it's a good thing I didn't pick the Data Canyon to be one of the locations for this, but no. I did.
Get your worm off my Arkan land.
There's a whole ironclad expanse out there you could have picked. So, your actual options are A, directly into Metallica's primary cogitator banks and data vaults. B, directly into the Noospheric upload data tethers. Or C, directly into the heart of Fabricator General Heptus Clang himself.
Now, we established last time we did this quiz that he doesn't have a heart. He has 3 bits of spine and some remnants of brain tissue.
Indeed.
Or is the heart metaphorical heart, or is that a literal heart?
Also, quite possibly.
Oh. I was kind of going with a clue there, but alright. I'm gonna go with the. I want to go with Clang because I just like saying Clang. I'm gonna go with Clang. I'm gonna say
yeah, the Noospheric tethers don't quite sound right either. What was the other option that's not tethers and not Clang?
The primary cogitator banks and data vaults.
Yes, let's go with that. I don't know. I think it's probably Clang.
You both going Clang?
'Cause that's like the denouement of a, it's got the narrative.
yeah,
in it.
that's the sort of haha.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can
Clang.
tell you, you are both right, and yes, Dave, it is a figurative heart because he does not have a biological one, but that is the description as written in the book. He delivers it directly into the heart of Fabricator General Heptus Clang, in that he basically USB plugs this technovirus into his mechanical form.
It's the one move we never had on Street Fighter was plugging in a USB stick.
Do you think he gets do you think when he does it, he has to go through a series of options? Sort of click here, download this. Oh, I'm afraid you need this patch.
Well, the first time he inserts it, it doesn't fit, and then he has to turn it upside down and try again. Turn it upside down and try again. The first time.
Do you think Typhus gets a little pop-up that's just like a little rusty clip that says, "I see you're trying to infect Heptus Clang. Can I help with that?" So yeah, again, another sort of big narrative takeaway from this is that Typhus succeeds in his siege of Metallica. He does in fact infect Metallica with this ridiculous Nurgle plague, the Nemesis worm. And in fact, our next question is: it took thousands of hours of painstaking exorcisms and purgations over 63 days to finally purge the prime industrial cluster, and with much lamentation, the rad saturation of the now horrific remains of Heptus Clang, obliterating all trace of his physical form. However, what happened exactly 7 days after the corruption was finally purged? Was it A Datageist of the now corrupted and tortured Heptus Clang possessed a warlord titan and rampaged across the prime industrial sector? B, the Nemesis plague returned, erupting anew across Metallica? Or C, Metallica suffered a catastrophic collapse of the noosphere, severing the Forge World's connection with the rest of the Mechanicus and the holy conduit of the Omnissiah's will?
Oh, I think that one. I think that one. That sounds like a very Nurgly thing to do.
I think the Data Geist.
So we went for the tortured data ghost of Clang returning and Nurgle cutting off the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think, mind you, Nurgle cutting off the Wi-Fi, that sounds more like a Be'lakor thing. Because again, it's not really chaotic, it's just irritating.
It's because they only did it for 63 days. If they'd done it for 64 days, they'd have been, a power of 2 number, and they'd have been a much better save, wouldn't they?
Well, obviously, interestingly, 63 days is 9 times 7.
True.
And then this event occurred 7 days later, which would have been 70 days since the infection.
I still think cutting off the Wi-Fi, that's...
Moving for Wi-Fi and Data Ghost. Well, I can tell you, you are both wrong. It is in fact that after the 63 days of purgation, 7 days later, the Nemesis Worm Plague returned and erupted anew across Metallica.
What does it do? Does it do anything fun?
So basically, it's mass like technovirus that both massively like corrupts machinery and spreads scrap code, but it also massively like bloats any biological matter. So like servitors would just be bloating up into basically giant monstrous sort of like plague machines. Heptus Clang himself, despite the fact that we know he only had a few slivers of brain matter and a couple of vertebrae left, he himself became a massed, withering mass of mutated flesh and buboes and all sorts. And basically, just imagine fleshy protrusions just bursting from machines and tentacles and all sorts of Cthulhu-esque Nurglish things.
That's cool.
He shouldn't have bombed all them Imperial planets land the last quiz.
Yeah, it's very much his comeuppance, wasn't it? So yeah, it happened again after they thought they got rid of it. So then our next question is, after the plague was purged a second time, what happened exactly 7 days later? Was it A, an outbreak of the walking pox turned all of the servitors on Metallica into a living plague of machine poxwalker hybrids? B, warp rifts opened once more in the prime industrial cluster, vomiting forth hordes of Nurgle demons? Or C, the Nemesis worm plague returned again?
That one.
The worm plague.
Yes, it is. That was a little bit of a gimme question, because that's exactly basically the whole premise of this plague that Typhus has inflicted upon Metallica, is that they can't get rid of it. Every time they do, it comes back again 7 days later. And again, and again. And gradually, the Metallican priesthood grasped the full extent of the damage Typhus had done to their world. Metallica's death would be slow and agonizing. And that's legitimately what's happened. Like, Metallica is now effectively in the grips of slowly turning into a demon world, and they can't do anything about it.
Nice.
And again, that's huge. This is Metallica. It's one of the founding Forge worlds of, like, again, an entirely playable faction in the game. Could you imagine if, this had happened to Merkrag or Baal or...
You're talking to someone who's played an army that their planet doesn't exist anymore, so yes, I can.
And I play an army whose planet's never really existed.
I mean, I guess in my case, my planet's now Armageddon, even though it used to be Ulnar. We'll get it back one day. So yeah, and then finally, our last question of the night. So after Morven Val basically appeared with her Vanguard force, eventually the main bulk of the Indomitus Crusade that was, heading for Charadon got there. This large crusading Imperial force designed to reclaim parts of the Imperium and the galaxy after the events of the Noctis Atrina and the birthing of the Great Rift. How did the recently arrived elements of the Indomitus Crusade respond to the state of the now devastated Charadon sector? Did they A. Arrive with vital supplies and reinforcements and set about the task of rebuilding the Charadon sector and restoring the ravaged Imperial military presence? B. They left a handful of reinforcements to help and then moved on in search of Imperial sectors they could actually help bolster? Or C. They swore a vow of vengeance and launched reclamation crusades in search of a cure for the Nemesis worm and for the lost world of Colossi?
Don't know.
I think they left them a handful of troops and said, "You're on your own, pal."
I think that they went, "Ooh, we're really annoyed. Let's go and find the planet." I think.
Well, I can tell you that the last point goes to Dave. Because yes, they did show up and basically, well.
Bit much for us.
Yeah. Can't really do much about this mess, can we? Here, have a couple of reinforcements. Bye. We're going to go do something where we can actually help out.
Wow.
They basically showed up and just decided it was a lost cause.
It's because they turned around and went, "How's that data canyon going for you?" Well,
Once you got the Nemesis worm in it, it was never the same again.
It was a continent-sized scar. Which does mean that after that, the final score, by my count, is 14 points to Dan and 12 to Dave.
yes,
Well played, Dan.
yes.
Which means it was close, and there were a couple of times where you kept switching positions who was in the lead, but in the end, Dan has come out on top of the data canyon.
Well, I want to go to the data canyon. Really, that's all I want to do. I want to see what it's like.
I mean, funnily enough, there was one sort of last tidbit of information at the end of it all, sort of just to round it off, but it wasn't really so much of a question I could make out of it, so I just thought I'd include it here as a last fun fact. Now it is long since the departure of Typhus from the Charadon sector, and rumours have begun to surface of a shadowy and fractured world deep within the Imperium Nihilus. A vast world shrouded in darkness, with continent-sized land masses hanging in the world's skies, held tethered by giant chains larger than Imperial battleships, crowned by a colossal fortress city of wailing souls, and home to a host of Chaos Knights calling themselves House Korvax, who serve an unknowable and shadowy master.
But not Be'lakor.
But not Be'lakor, honest.
Oh,
Well, he's not unknowable, is he? Because we know him.
They're saying that Be'lakor has taken the world to somewhere in the Imperium Nihilus, and it is now more or less a Chaos Knight household world that owes its fealty to Be'lakor.
that's kind of cool.
It is. I don't know if this House Korvax existed before this book, or if it's one of the pre-existing Chaos Knight households, and this is just some lore for them now. But I'm really looking forward to when we're first going to have our actual Warzone set within the Imperium Nihilus, because since the release of 9th edition, they've not done that yet.
They've done nothing in Nihilus, and that was the thing I was most interested in, which is...
I'm guessing it'll probably be whichever Warzone features Baal. I think when they go to Nihilus, I reckon they're going to go to Baal and basically do a whole thing with the Blood Angels.
Is Octarius in Nihilus?
No, Octarius is actually in the Segmentum Ultima, or the Ultimate Segmentum. So we're still in Sanctus, which is why I'm hoping maybe after Octarius we might see our first Nihilus and Warzone, which will be great. But yeah, that's basically everything for Warzone Charadon. It's been a good, fun 6 months, pretty much. We started with Rust and we finished with a data canyon.
Yep.
Stop it.
And I'm sure we'll have as much fun doing this again when we get to Warzone Octarius, and instead I get to play some sort of name game, probably with orky weaponry and inventions.
Yeah.
Possibly, I won't be surprised if the orcs have given some inventive names to particularly tough and infamous bugs that they had to fight when battling the Tyranids. We'll have to see. But either case, I'm looking forward to it, and it definitely sounds like you two have had fun with it tonight as well, especially Dan.
I'm sorry for listeners' ears when I go forward, but I just, the names are great.
Thank you for creating the twist, Tony.
Yep.
No problem. We'll see if we can get you back for another one, Dave. Is it going to become a tradition that we drag you through one of these every time?
Yeah, make sure that all the regular crew come on and beat me in these quizzes.
So yeah, that is most of everything for tonight. So just before we head out, shall we quickly go over our community spotlights? We've got a few little names we want to drop and people we want to shout out. So how about, I've heard apparently Dave's got something special for us. So Dave, do you want to start?
Yeah, it's something that actually Dan here put me onto. A shop I visited recently in Great Yarmouth called Norfolk Boardgames, Wargames and Collectables. And it's one of those little hobbit hole type shops where you know it's a game shop and you're expecting that, but it's laid out. I took my youngest daughter there and she said, "Dad, it's like your room is, but it's all neatly laid out on shelves." And it's just got lots and lots of second-hand miniatures, not all. A lot of 40k, mostly Warhammer, one kind or another. A little bit of old Hammer stuff in there, but not uniquely. There was bolt action and other figures there. So if you're ever in Great Yarmouth, definitely worth popping in to see Neil in Norfolk Boardgames, Wargames and Collectables in the back streets there, and pick up some interesting miniatures that you need to round out your collection. A very interesting second-hand miniature shop.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if it sounds like Dave's man cave, but for sale and neatly organised, then yeah, I'm sure that is a sight to see.
It's yes. Anybody who, if you search for Norfolk Boardgames and Wargames and Collectables, they've got a Facebook page, and he regularly posts up pictures of new stuff, and there are some pictures of the shelves in there, and it's a sight to behold.
It's amazing.
It is. You've been there as well, right?
Yeah. I found it by accident, and it's just amazing.
Is it like an Aladdin's cave of wargaming stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put a link in the description like I always do, so you should just be able to find it on there if you ever find yourself in Great Yarmouth. And Dan, how about yourself?
I have been following on the old Instagrams a chap who, this is more artwork based, but he's called I can't pronounce his name, Miguel Iglesias, and he does a lot of the portrait art for he did some Primarch portraits, but some of his artwork's actually been in the latest Thousand Suns book on the inside covers with all the strength. He's just got such an interesting style. It's very sort of it's all digital stuff, but he it's just very, very lifelike and very sort of haunting. A lot of the images are quite haunting. So he's worth checking out.
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff he does, and yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's got, like you say, it's just characterful images, but not in like not a cartoony way or a caricatured way, just in, like you say, a very sort of haunting and almost.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of sort of old style Tudor-esque type painting, you know, sort of, are they not al frescoes, that's eating outside. What are they called? Frescoes? I can't remember the
just fresco.
Yeah, al frescoes outside. Fresco type stuff, which is really nice. So yes, I recommend giving his stuff a look.
It's definitely the kind of things you could imagine being used to portray like a sense of gravitas to the characters, particularly in the case of, like, you know, the Primarchs and such. It's some good stuff. Yeah, and then finally for myself, I want to recommend the Beyond the Tabletop account on Instagram. So that's just at Beyond the Tabletop, and it's actually one of the co-hosts from the Lookouts 40k podcast. But it's Philip's just hobby, you know, channel really, where, you know, posts all the projects he's working on, and I regularly just keep seeing him post things that are just really interesting. So he's currently working on like a Minotaur's Primaris force as like his main 40k army. But he's also been dabbling in a bunch of sort of like Blanchitsu style sort of converting and modelling. He's been working on some Thunder Warriors. He's been converting up from all sorts of stuff recently, which look really cool. And he's also currently trying to put together a first edition Space Orcs army. So maybe Dave, you might have any suggestions for particular models to look out for, because I know he's trying to amass a small Space Orc force.
Yeah, no, there's some very interesting models out there. Sometimes they don't go as expensively as the Space Marine models because they're not quite as popular, but they really should be. They really should be.
But yeah, I've been enjoying his stuff, so go check him out on Instagram. And I think that is about everything for tonight. So as we say goodbye to Charadon, and we personally say hello again to Dan, we hope you've enjoyed being back on the show.
Oh, it's been I haven't had a laugh like this in a very long time. So yes, I have.
Good. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Just being able to come on and chat 40k, probably in not quite the way you were expecting it was going to go at the start of the night, but I'm sure you've enjoyed it nonetheless.
Oh yes, definitely.
Only on the Narrative Wargamer Podcast do you get this kind of engagement with Mechanicus talk. No stratagems and OP tournament results here. No, here we talk about iron expanses and data canyons.
Stop it. I'm going to go again.
Malachor jumping out of a birthday cake.
Stretching nights.
Indeed.
But yes, until next time, guys, this has been the Narrative Wargamer Podcast, helping you to discover more ways to play 40k.